Hello and welcome to the Amazon Show with me, Chris Stafford. And if you've been following this show for the past few months, that you will know that we have been following my friend Marci Kornegay on her adventures on the Pacific Crest Trail from California to the Canadian border. Now, Marci started off in May of this year, and she finished just a couple of weeks ago. It might be a bit more than that, Marci, but now that you're back home on the East Coast, you've had a few days now to reflect on the whole trip, and I just want to pick it up really from where we left off, which actually was in July. So tell us how you're feeling now that it's all over and done with.
I think I'm tired, and it's all finally catching up to me. It's like I have slept in a bed for the last couple of nights, and I'm realizing that bed is so comfortable and it's so safe, and I don't have to listen out for little strange animals coming to get my food or get me at night. And it has just enhanced my sleep 10 times over. So I finally feel like I'm starting to get rested. And yeah, the reflection process it's been hard, kind of, I'll be honest with you. It's because I want to stop and reflect and think about things, and my mind will just start to wander. And then all of a sudden I realize, you know what, I've got errands to run, or I've got places to go and things to do. But yeah, I think it's going to be a process that I unpack over at least until the end of the year.
I can well imagine. And you transition very gradually by driving across the country and seeing some sights along the way. Just took your time there. Remind us what day and date you actually finished when you actually finally came off the trail. What day was that?
You know what? I probably should have that in my head. I think it was around September 20th, 21st. Possibly 20, I don't know, the last 3 to 4 weeks of September, I got off trail, and it was really interesting. And I know that we'll talk about this a little bit later on, where I went back and hiked some miles that were not in chronological mapping order in the steady progression of going north, but I went back to Northern California to pick up some miles that I had missed earlier in the season due to some wildfires. And so I spent the last 2 weeks on the trail completely alone. Never really saw anybody else hiking. Nobody else was out visiting the trail or any other through hikers. And, spent a lot of time in solitude and things like that. So yeah, those last couple of weeks were really sort of a blur. It was full of heavy hiking days, full of mileage, and a lot of early mornings, and not getting into my sleeping bag until almost midnight, several of the nights. So yeah, I mean, those last couple of weeks, but yeah, I finished up right there at the end of September, and then decided that I thought maybe the best therapy of reintegrating myself back into what I call real life and real world was to drive back across country. I currently live in New Jersey, so I had this small fear of jumping on an airplane, flying into Newark or JFK, and then all of a sudden I'm in the middle and engulfed in people and city noises. And I thought maybe, it might be nice to drive back and sightsee along the way. So I took about a 10-day road trip and saw a couple of national parks, went on a small few hikes, and just really had a lot of time to myself, as if I needed more time to myself, but had that time to myself just to ease back into things, which I think is a pretty healthy way for me to do it.
Yeah, I thought that transition was a great idea. I was just looking at our text, Marci, while you were talking, and I've got it as Wednesday, September 21st, that I think you actually finished. Or it might have been in that night, because I texted you the night before, knowing that you might be finishing the next day, and then I texted you the next day, and you responded, and it looked like that's when you came off trail. But I want to go back to where we left off in July and the beginning of the detours, because the last stages of up through Northern California, Oregon, and Washington State, right up to the Canadian border, were not going to be, as it turned out, the hike that you had hoped for, right, because of the wildfires. Last time we spoke, you had come back with your friends there to Lake Tahoe because of the trail being blocked and shut from you getting out of Northern California on it. So then you jumped some miles. Take us to that point, how that happened, why it happened, and how you progressed, and then, the rest of the trail and how you had to come back down to finish some miles. Talk us through all of that chronologically, how and how it affected you psychologically, because it wasn't the hike that you'd hoped for in the end.
Yeah, I think a lot of it came down to just logistics and making decisions that felt right at the time. And I think a lot is really hard when you think that you're going to be able to go from point A to point B with a great time in between. But in reality, hiking a long trail, knowing that you've got over 2,600 miles ahead of you, you've got the dangers of climate change and, so many changing factors that you're dealing with, weather events. Particularly, with the forest fires, you got flooding, and winter is starting sooner, and the heat and the extreme temperatures down in the desert. So, with these long trails, there's been several articles, a lot of research, and a lot of eyes, I think, talking about the PCT becoming one of those trails that you're going to have to do in smaller pieces or in sections, or you at the very least will have to expect disruptions that we experienced this summer. And that was, getting to our point at Lake Tahoe and realizing that there were probably close to 80 to 90,000 acres of land that surrounds the Pacific Crest Trail that were on fire. And that closed down several parts of the trail. And the way it closed it down was a little frustrating to try to logistically make sense of it. It wasn't like you could just skip the parts that were on fire and go to the little parts in between fires, because it would be, if you were looking at a straight line, it would be this little part's on fire, this little part's not, this little part's on fire, this little part's not. And logistically, you can't really get to those parts that are not on fire. So the big decision was to just, let's skip everything. Let's skip probably close to 500 miles in Northern California that was either currently closed and actively closed due to active fires. And some of those were tied into parts of trail that had closed, several months ago or last season during fire season. So they were completely stripped of trees, vegetation, and some of it kind of unsafe for hiking. You don't have the root structure that was once there. So a lot of the trail is now sandy and ashy and washed away, and it going through the different elements and doesn't provide really good hiking. There's certainly nothing to look at. And so I made the conscious decision just to skip those parts for now and go and tackle as much of the rest of the trail as possible. And fortunately was able to go through and hike most of Oregon. Still had to cut out a small section of the southern portion of Oregon, but got most of Oregon in and got into Washington. And I'll tell you what, those two states are gorgeous. Rich, thick forest, lots of pine. And getting into Washington, I was like, oh, this is perfect. This feels like home. And we're going to touch the Canadian border, and going through these small towns, kind of racing the clock a little bit to make sure that we get done before before it gets too cold, before the big snows come. And then getting to a little small town. It's called Stehekin, and it's on Lake Chelan, and it's one of the deepest lakes, freshwater lakes in the country. And we got there, and Chris, it was like something out of a movie. I thought the world was going to end. There was so much smoke. I mean, it's not like you looked over and you could see fire, but the smoke was so thick, and some of the pictures looked like they had filters on them, like the sepia tone filter on it. Mm-hmm. And then you look up into the sun, and it is just this muted orange ball. Like it was unreal. And it's so hard to explain, except that, a lot of people were describing describing it either on trail or online is very apocalyptic looking. And this is it. And right there knew that probably we weren't going to be able to hit the Canadian border. So you get disappointed. You can't hike a lot of the Northern California. You skip ahead. You're satisfied with Oregon. You're rocking and rolling almost 500 miles through Washington. And then all of a sudden you're stopped dead in your tracks and you can't go the last 80 miles to touch the Canadian border, which is the whole point of this hike to begin with. So yeah, it was devastating. I mean, there's big words that come to mind: devastating, heartbroken, just felt defeated. And, at the same time, it's like, okay, well, let's put things in perspective here. There's people that might be losing their land or their homes, or that might not be able to handle breathing in this type of smoke due to health reasons or something like that. So there's bigger things out there. But for the hikers, for me, it was truly like, wow, I have spent all this time on this trail. I've hiked over 2,000 miles and we can't get a picture with a Canadian flag. And that was rough. And, I had to lick the wounds and, realize that wasn't the only reason that I decided to do this hike. And do a little soul searching and put a smile on and say, you know what, that's okay. I don't have to touch the Canadian border this year. It's okay. Because at this point in the season and in the remote location of the fires near the border, the fire services, the wildlife, different wildlife agencies, I believe that they were just going to let those fires burn and weren't going to actively put them out because there was no harm to, a lot of the people out there. So they were just going to let those burn, and people that were trying to hike to those areas just out of luck. And that included where I was at that time. There were several hikers that had finished and were able to get through and complete most parts of the trail, including touching the Canadian border. But with such a late start in the season, wasn't able to get up there in time.
Yeah, that is really tough, I'm sure, mentally for you to actually come to terms with that. But you mentioned there, not this time, right? You didn't get to touch it this time. Does that mean that you still have it on your bucket list to go back and finish those miles sometime?
Yeah, I have to. I started something, and I think that's something that we share in common. Once we start something, we're going to finish it. Yeah. And that's always going to be in the back of my head. It's going to be not whether if I get up there, but when I'm able to get up there, and when does it make sense to go up there and have a celebration of it, put some closure to it, close the chapter, and start daydreaming about the next trail.
Unfinished business.
Yeah, unfinished business. Maybe I'll get a t-shirt made.
Yeah, the endless hike, unfinished business. So that Lake Chelan, which is, by the way, spelled Chela, and that is kind of parallel to Everett, which is north of Seattle, just to put this in context, right? So you'd eaten a big piece of that pie of Washington State and all of Oregon then. How many miles did you anticipate would have been left for you to go back to?
It was going to be about 600, 650, I think. A lot of these miles are so up for loose interpretation, but it's about 600 miles to go back and finish not only that little 80-mile stretch to get to the Canadian border, but then I needed to go back and finish some stuff that was left behind during what they call the McKinney fires and the Northern California fires. And that was what I decided to do. The girls that I was hiking with that we featured on the last episode, they elected to go back and resume their home lives and perhaps chew on the idea of coming back and finishing it another year. I just felt like I still had some good hiking in me. I felt like I could spend another couple of weeks back out on trail. And I felt like if I went out and did this by myself, it would be a different experience that I hadn't had yet. And I've spent so much of this trail with other people. And, so much time hiking alone, but you always know that you're going to be somewhere. You're going to see people at the beginning or the end of your day. And I felt like that if I went back down and continued some of the miles that were missed and do that alone and with the idea that there was going to be some solitude, and I could set new goals, new physical and challenging goals where maybe I get more mileage in. You know, when you go out and hike by yourself, you don't have anybody to answer to except your own aching body. And I didn't have any group decisions. There were no sacrifices to be made. And I just went out and hiked as many miles that I felt like I could without completely falling on my face. And I mean, it's pretty cool. What you can do when you can really push yourself. I should have written these miles down, but I'm going back in the back of my head. And I think I started out with like a 27-mile day and a 24-mile day. Then I had a 35-mile day, and that felt good. So I turned around and did it again. And then I realized, you know what? I'm sort of lonely out here. And I did reach that place of, maybe there were some tears, and there was that feeling of, what am I doing? Like, why am I pushing so hard? Why am I out here by myself? Are you having fun? And you really start to second guess what it is you're doing. Like I remember one day in particular on this little 2-week stretch where I went out by myself to finish these miles. And, I woke up really early that next morning, and it was freezing. I could see my breath. There was a little bit of frost on the tent, but I packed all my stuff up really quick and just rushed out of camp. Ate my bars on the go, ate snacks all day, never really stopped to sit down, stretch, breathe, take in a larger lunch or anything like that. It was just like little nibbles all day long. And it was about 10 o'clock at night, and I realized I hadn't had anything to drink since lunch, since around noon. And I'm thirsty. I'm tired. I'm starving, and I haven't sat down yet. And so I sit down, and I'm like, well, maybe this is a good place to set up my tent. And I go about another half a mile and find a nice little flat spot, set up my tent, and start cooking dinner. And everything is throbbing. Like my face, my head is throbbing. My legs are obviously throbbing. I'm like, this isn't the way it should be. And, I had to go back and reevaluate. It's like, why am I pushing so many miles just to hurry up and get done? I don't have to do this anymore. I can completely quit. Maybe I'll make a better decision first thing in the morning. And that's what I did. I went to sleep, and you never make a decision to quit something after a hard day or during a hard day. And the next morning I felt good. I had my water. I was rehydrated, and I went back out and did another 28 miles that day. And I'm so glad that I stuck with it, because it was so important for me to stick with something and complete those miles. And I feel pretty good about it. So including the miles up at the top of the border and some of the miles that still remain in Northern California, I'm at about 200 miles of trail that have not been finished. And when I go back out there, I will go and finish those 80 miles at the border, and then the trail will be done for me. I will probably not do about 100, 150 miles that were kind of lost in that Northern California area that had they'd been burned before. So it's all burn section, kind of unsafe, unsettled soil, no views. And that part of the trail is just, it's not a priority for me to get back out there.
How many days were you on the, I think I was tracking you, obviously. I'm just trying to remember how many days after you came back south, Marci, you had to complete that lower section. How many days did that total?
I think I was, it felt like one long day. Let's see. I started at Crater Lake, which is a gorgeous, gorgeous place. I don't know if you've ever been to Crater Lake National Park, but it's phenomenal. But that was where I started, and I went south to Ashland, Oregon, and that took about 4.5 days. And then I was able to get a ride and go to Etna and then hike north back to Ashland, Oregon. So it was about roughly 10 days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I want to say
that sounds about right. And having done that then on your own, you said to me this was like a completely different hike because you were on your own and you did feel the loneliness that you really didn't have a chance to experience when you knew there was always going to be someone at the end of the day that you'd be socializing with.
Yeah. It was it was completely two different hikes, and I appreciate them both. I mean, they both take something from you and they both give something to you. And I think that latter experience, being alone, having the solitude, it was, I think there was a lot more pressure on myself to, I guess, maybe question and understand that the whole reason that I enjoy doing this is for the right reasons. And I'm not influenced by others. I'm not following, but I'm truly putting myself in those situations because I truly enjoy the suck of it and the good stuff. And it's all equal and it all kind of balances out. And yeah, I mean, at the time when you start feeling a little bit sorry for yourself, or maybe start feeling scared, maybe, I guess, or a little bit, and those are things that I've still got to understand. What was I feeling exactly? Because I don't think I was scared of being out there.
Was it being vulnerable?
Yeah.
In the sense that you were totally exposed on your own. And it just leads me to my next question, which was going to be, then if you were to do this again, or a long hike, and then there'll be more long hikes, I know, in your future, would you prefer then to have some company at the end of the day? Or do you think that has altered your mental fortitude to say, okay, I can do this on my own. I don't need company. How important is that? I mean, that's a big distinction psychologically when you set off on a huge hike like this.
Yeah, I think that it was the quiet. Things got really quiet. When you're alone, things are quiet. And you have a lot more time to think for yourself. And when people are around, you know, there's always other conversations going. And I mean, check yourself, you know, next time you go out and you're around a lot of people, you don't have time to think about yourself or think about what it is you're doing in that space. But when you're by yourself, you certainly do. And yes, I think that I enjoy that space. I think that I keep myself good company when I'm alone. And I also think that I need multiple avenues, you know, throughout real life and also trail life. And I think that having people at the end of the day is nice. It's friendly. It's fun. It's conversational. It's healthy. I certainly don't think that I could go out there and spend 5 months in wilderness. Like, this is remote wilderness. This isn't just a state park trail. This is going out and you are on a trail in the middle of a state, in the middle of a mountain range, and there's not a road anywhere near you. This is remote wilderness that it's untouched by humans, except for people that go and put their footprints on this trail. And I think that that's a little bit different too, to have that realization and thought in the back of your head. But at the end of the day, I think that it's something that I would want, is to have that solitude, but also want to have the conversations too, the other people, and then finding that healthy balance of both and being able to work it in. You know, certainly I think that it would have been a lot more difficult for me to make smarter, probably, decisions about the wildfires had I not been with other people making those decisions together. I think I'm stubborn enough and probably maybe borderline reckless. and I hope mom and dad never listen to this, but, you know, maybe borderline reckless to the fact that, well, if I can still get in more miles, I can just walk, you know, around the fires, or I can walk, you know, create a different route that's never been walked before, and get around the fire and hike between 2 or 3 massive wildfires and get to the next fire and walk around it. And that's not the smart thing to do. I mean, it's clearly not the smart thing to do. And sometimes it's nice to have a little, some friends, you know, sitting there saying, that is not an option. Skipping these miles and coming back to them if it's available is the option. And that's sort of nice. Keep me safe.
Yeah, I remember sending you a text to that effect when you were going back to do those miles and you were upping the pace. And
yeah.
something to the effect of, calculated risks, knowing you and knowing you're going to do them anyway, but not to be reckless. I was starting to get a little bit concerned about you, that you would push it too much.
Yeah.
And you just push your body and your mind too much in your determination to finish those miles. And when you up the pace, you said, your body was throbbing at the end of it.
And that's not the point of it. That's not the point of this whole thing.
Right. Yeah. So it's becoming a smart hiker. And I guess as a result of all this and the previous hikes you've done, this one really has also told you stuff about yourself, okay, that this is all experience now, and this is how it feels if I do X, Y, Z. So not going to go there. I'm going to stay within those parameters, which are safe, which and enjoyable, and within the reasons for your doing this in the first place. Not taking any unnecessary risks, but also not taking away the enjoyment of it all and the reason why you're doing it.
Right. Being smart. I think it all just comes down to being smart. Yeah.
Being smart. You're a smart woman, and now you're a smart hiker, right?
Right. All the lessons combined. Yeah, absolutely.
All the lessons combined. And I'm sure there's a lot of other things that you got from this. I know at one point when you were down in the desert, we talked about, the mental fortitude and how you were starting when you were starting to feel like, okay, what do you do with your thinking all day on the trail? Where does your mind go? And disciplining yourself, and you obviously got to do that. You got plenty of practice at doing that.
Yeah. That
was becoming a challenge at the start, wasn't it, Mars? So tell us what you learned from that in terms of how you occupy your headspace when you're just putting one foot in front of the other for hours and hours all day and into the night.
Oh, it sounds so boring, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't, because of all the experiences that you're getting, right? Yeah. All of those all the sensations, the sensory stimulation that you're getting at the same time, but somewhere your head's going. I mean, in the desert, you may be just going in a straight line for a little while, but what do you do with your head? What do you do with your thoughts that are? I mean, and there's the thoughts from the experiences, right?
Right.
And that's how you fill your headspace.
Yeah, I think it's two separations. So you got your physical limits, and then you have your mental or your emotional expressive limits. And those physical limits, I mean, those are obvious. Those are pretty obvious. You're always pushing against them. You're always going to be a little bit sore at the end of the day. You understand physical limits a lot more than your mental limits and where your headspace is. And I think at the beginning, I was short selling myself. At the very beginning, it was all just, okay, well, what do I need to do to survive? Am I hungry? Yes. Am I thirsty? Yes. Do I need to hike 5 more miles to get to water? Yes. Do I need to hike 10 more miles to get to a camp to spend my time? So they're like short-lived survival thoughts. And these come and go, and they're necessary for survival, or they're necessary for a pleasant experience, right? And so once you keep going, you kind of push those things out and they become automatic. It's just your body responds to those types of things. And then your headspace starts to fill with, well, maybe it's humility. I've tripped over, I don't know, countless rocks and roots. And you start thinking, oh gosh, this humility, I'm tripping all over the place. And you kind of unpack that a little bit. It's like a little series of whatever happens in the moment. I started to unpack those things. And it's like, wow, I need to be maybe more humble in my real life, or maybe more accepting or more open-minded. And I start thinking about things. And I say the word real life just because it's not real life. And I keep going back and forth and running parallels between the two. And I think that's where I really occupied a lot of my time and space, is just drawing parallels from what I was experiencing on trail to maybe what I was doing in a work life or a career life or relationship life. And how could those things be better? I'm always seeking to find better in my life, or better thoughts or better answers. And how can those types of things be better? And ultimately, whenever I'd go back and reflect, it's like, was there joy there? And I've got a huge fascination with joy. I think the word joy and what it brings, it's like, why are we doing anything unless it brings us joy? And we can make changes. We can stop doing something or accept more of something if it brings us more or less joy. And I find so much joy in so many small, simple things when I go out on these trips. And so that quietness, excuse me, that I was talking about earlier, with that quietness, I was able to hear the crunch of the gravel. And that is my absolute favorite smell or favorite sound. I love hearing crunchy gravel and footsteps on rocks, and being really, really in tune with that stuff. And then some of my favorite smells were the pines. Like, there's so many different variations of pine trees out there, and you could smell them, and you could smell the sage. And it was incredible. You could smell so much more deeper, and all the feelings. I mean, really, as I talk about it now, I would finally, after a long day, get into my tent and wrap up in my sleeping quilt, and just the extra down in my sleeping quilt is so comfortable. I got some new wool socks midway through the trail, and just putting on new wool socks was such a great sensation. And just the little simple things that are, they're enhanced. And you finally have the quiet space, or I had the quiet space to be able to accept all those things and really find the joy and just the simplicity of being out there.
Did it make you adjust your settings to real life and your expectations in real life, your ambitions in real life?
I don't know. And I think that might be something that might be to be continued to think about. Because I think doing these things, they change you. And if they don't, then for me, it's like, why do them? If there's not any kind of change, significant change, then it's sort of, I look at it as, well, that was a waste of time. I could have been doing something else, maybe a little less painful. But yeah, I would expect, and I have high expectations that there will be positive effect and change. Just thinking of maybe off the top of my head, I project that I will have a stronger attitude towards keeping my levels of health at where they are now, and little things like hydration and things like that I'm starting to notice that are really, really important. But I think that recognizing people and sitting back and observing people, and I think it's really important because, I met so many different types of people out there on that trail, and we're all coming from a different place, a different background, socioeconomic background, different experiences, as we do in other parts of our lives. And I think that sometimes I forget to really pay attention to where people come from, and who are people, and the people that I surround myself, and where were they and where are they now, and how does that sort of reflect with the company that I keep. I want to be around people that are motivated, that are focused, that strive to do crazy, wild, big things. And I think it's really important that find activities and meet people that have those same interests, as and that's for me.
Yeah, I mean, they're big takeaways, right? And what a great way to learn more about yourself and shift your priorities. Just keep going out on a trail and getting new experiences, and enjoying that solitude, which I'm sure would have contributed to this as well. It just shifts your focus, your values, your priorities. But it also makes you appreciate the things that we don't get in real life, right? These experiences are outside of real life. People don't spend their whole lives as professional hikers, right? This is not a career.
No.
So, I just think that time that we spend doing these adventures is so valuable, right? But you have to stay in the context of, not being independently wealthy and able to give up a career just to go and do these things. There's got to be a way of sponsoring this, Marci. And I think next time, I think you need to look at some sponsorship.
Well, based off of what I ate and drank, I think I need to have a good sponsorship from Ramen Noodle.
There you go.
Idaho and potatoes. Macro bars are the absolute best bars, and certainly recommend them for anybody. Low sugar, high protein, good stuff.
Macro bars. And I think they're the ones I have, aren't they? Yeah.
Only the best eat them, really, Chris. And they're the bar champions.
I didn't realize that, but I'm glad they are to know that now. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And absolutely. I wish there was a sponsorship opportunity involved, but no, it's an interest that brings me joy, and I'm going to continue doing it. And I think that's the simplicity of it all.
And often people have big experiences like this, and they're asked the same questions, what your takeaways were, and, what next, and what advice you would give to anyone else that's setting off on the PCT, and in what order, because I know you've done the AT, the Appalachian Trail, and you've now done the Pacific Crest Trail, and the Triple Crown is the Continental Divide Trail, which is the longest of the three, isn't it? It's over 3,000 miles.
Yeah, 3,100. So, yeah, it's a trifecta, and it's definitely within reach, and it's on my list, and can't stop, won't stop till we get that Triple Crown, at least.
Exactly. So what would you say to people who are doing just one of these or long hike in particular? I mean, to be able to sustain yourself over that period of time. Let's just focus on the PCT then. What advice would you give to anyone setting off on that?
Yeah, speaking specifically on the PCT, it's you got to rip the Band-Aid off and realize that it's okay to go out there and go at it alone. Don't wait. You don't have to wait for anybody to go with you. You don't have to wait for the right moment. There's never really going to be a right moment. And I think that that's a pretty blanket answer for a lot of things that we really want to do. But with the PCT, I will say after reading some of the articles that have come out and just what I saw, I don't know how long the PCT is going to be around as far as a through hikeable trail from Mexico to Canada without any stops in between. There's always going to be fire reroutes. There's going to be floods and washouts. So if you want to go out there and see just these amazing, you walk through 7 national parks, which is insane. Yeah. And they're national parks that you really can't access any other way than to be out in wilderness, and to be able to yell and, just give that guttural, like big wolf, like, arr, anytime you want to. And I love doing that. It made me feel so good. And we got some of the people around us hiking would do it too, especially on some of the switchbacks around the mountains, but it would just I wish I could just let one really big one out, but it would hurt everybody's ears. But it's just, next time you're alone, go find a space, or if you're at your home by yourself, just let it out as loud as you can, all the way from your bottom of your gut. And then just let it all out until you don't have any air left. And I guarantee you feel so much better. It's this feral feeling that you get when you do something that you just don't get to do on an everyday basis. And you can't be afraid to hold back. And you can't be afraid to hold back with your wolf yell or your howl. And you can't be afraid to just go out there and take the first couple of steps. And, you see things and feel things and experience things are completely different. And it's okay to be outside your comfort zone. And in bigger picture, Chris, there's a poem that actually was shared with me. My mom shared it with me a while back, and it's called The Dash. And it was a poem written by Linda Ellis. And it represents life. Like, the whole poem is about your life. And it's the dash between the 2 numbers, the year you were born and the year that you die, that most likely will be on your headstone. And it's what you do with your dash and how we choose to live our life. And if you have a dash mentality, I guarantee you're going to howl more often and do crazy things. And so that's something that for a while I've adapted a dash mentality, and I try not to say no to big things.
I love that. I've been sitting here smiling at the very idea of being able to go somewhere and howl and know that no one is hearing me. I'm going to try that, Mars. This is going to be my challenge. Yeah.
All right. Here's another challenge. Find your howl, but do it at least 3 times, because I guarantee you the first one, you're not letting yourself go.
Okay.
The second one, you're going to look over your shoulder and think, oh, I wonder if anybody heard me. And then the third one, you're going to be like, what the hell? Who cares? Who cares? And then that third one is the one that you need to package up, and that's going to be your inner howl. And that's your howl. That's yours.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to find my inner howl. This idea.
Yeah.
All right. So now you're home and you're still transitioning, right? But you have got your hair cut and your nails done. So you're halfway there, Mars.
I did get my nails done and they look gorgeous. I even got my toes done, and
wow.
the girl did them, and another girl came over and she's like, I think we might want to go shorter on those. And she came over. I got 2 manicures for the price, or 2 pedicures for the price of 1. It was embarrassing, but I accepted it. It's fine.
How are your feet? Because, each time we talked while you're on the trail, your feet were obviously suffering. But how are they now? Are they healing in any way?
Well, I've gone online to look up some of the symptoms that I was having. And it's actually a condition called Christmas toes. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I haven't. Is it seasonal?
I guess so. So they're called Christmas toes, and I kid you not, it's Christmas toes, and you won't get feeling in your toes until after Christmas. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Post-holiday season, I should be able to feel my feet again, according to the internet.
Okay. That's, that's a long time to wait to feel your toes. What else do you feel that you need to do to, I guess, sort of complete the transition, complete this journey? Even if it's not the miles that you're hiking now, but complete it in your own mind so that you can check that box and move on. Is that something that happens? Is that a ticking a box, or is it just going to be an ongoing process?
I think there's boxes that I can check that will help me move on. I think the obvious thing is to go back up next year, hopefully, as soon as the season opens up. So I'm anticipating maybe end of July, fly into Seattle, drive over, and pick up where I left off in Stehekin, Washington, and hike north, touch the border. Of course, all of it's going to be burnt. I would anticipate not many trees remaining. But I feel like that it's okay. I've got to go up there and do the path that would be the completion. I think that would be the exclamation point. That would be able to put some things to bed. But in the interim, I think that just being able to wash my gear and store it away, those are the little things where it's like, okay, well, I'm not looking at this pile of stuff anymore that I lived in for the last 5 months. Put my pack away, unpack, and completely transition. And I think that I will definitely do some more writing and packing some feelings. And then, I definitely want to pull out some more of the short stories that I experienced along the way and get those written down, or at least recorded in some way, so that they just stay with me. They live with me. And then obviously I'll probably have to get probably close to 5,000 pictures off my phone. So I'm not just wasting time just scrolling and looking at everything, and just, have a nice little organizational method for all that. But those are just little things. I think I just definitely need to finish that little section of trail and finish. Yeah.
Completely draw a line underneath that. Now, at what point then in the timeline of life do you have the CDT on your schedule?
Oh, I would anticipate life to get in my way, to where, where maybe I would, I don't know, just have to reevaluate and see what the next year or two dishes out. I think maybe a 2024 campaign of the CDT is pretty realistic, barring, any specialized employment that might be coming my way. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. It's all kind of up in the air, but it's definitely something that will always be in the forefront of my mind.
For sure. And then you've got the series of the 4,000 feet. 4,000? Is it 4,000? The hikes in New England? Yeah,
there's 48 4,000 footers in New Hampshire in the White Mountains. And I'm, for the most part, done with those. I've got about another 10, 15 more of those. And I think that would be just a couple of weekend trips to bag all of those. And there's, of course, several national scenic trails across the country that I've got the eyes on. I think a previous goal was to get all 11 of them. But that's not the priority as much as the Triple Crown, doing the CDT, doing some smaller hikes, and just see how I feel. You've really piqued my interest in getting on a bike and being on saddle. So I think that it would be a lot of fun to become a biker. Maybe I need to learn the terminology and get the equipment and figure it all out. But yeah, it's like starting with training wheels with that. I'm a new biker, so maybe I could learn a little bit more about that and appreciate that more.
Well, and not too new a biker. After all, the Potomac Heritage Trail that we did in the spring was 472 miles, so not a complete beginner here, Mars. But there's more to do, and we have one lined up, I think, for the spring that we started to talk about. Tell us how you chose that, because it's an interesting story how you came upon the idea of doing this particular trail.
Well, I mean, I think that there's so many neat rails and trails systems through the country. And, I definitely want to spend a little bit more time diving into those and learning a little bit more about them and in the history and the culture that goes along with those. But happened to see it. There's these 3 women, they're Wonder Women. And they have, I started following them when they were doing the Appalachian Trail. They hiked the Pacific Crest Trail. They did the CDT. So they've got the Triple Crown. And then after the Triple Crown, they decided to get on their bikes and do some exploring. And I just find it, they're so empowering and they're so much fun to watch. They've got great personalities. They're on social media and maybe we can link to them. I think they're pretty cool. And it might be an episode where maybe we could get them on this show at some point. But they're really inspiring. And, when you see women out of retirement that are going out and reaching their goals and chasing dreams and doing it as feral humans, as I've kind of referred to, it's kind of really, really neat to find like-minded people. Anyway, they just finished this trail and it's called the Empire State Trail, and it links Buffalo, and then you drive through the rural and the suburban roads and canals of upstate New York, and then you end up in New York City, which I think that would be pretty unique way to end a trail in the middle of Times Square. So yeah, I'd love to give that a try.
All right. Well, stay tuned to this podcast, because I think it's a great idea that we catch up with those women and hear about their travels. And then we will also bring you news of this new bike ride that we're going to do, hopefully in the spring, because Marci is persuading me that we really should, it's easy for her, but I should learn to camp. So it is 750 miles from the Canadian border at Buffalo down to New York City. So it's going to take us, I think, about 13 days, wasn't it, Mars, based on the mileage we did before. So, yeah, I think this is going to be a next fun challenge. So you can't call yourself a novice biker anytime, Marci. Now you've got both tools in your toolbox now, both skills. So I'm looking forward to that one. As you know, I love the idea. So, yeah, stay tuned to this show because we'll bring you more of this, of Marci's adventures, of our adventures, and that of other women too. So, Marci, again, you know how I feel about what you've done here with the PCT. I'm enormously proud of you. I love you to bits. I think you're absolute hero, and you're going to be doing a lot more. That I'm just going to be the bystander and watch you as you achieve the Triple Crown.
Well, you are by far the best support that I could imagine having at home. So thank you for keeping me going and always asking me where I am and where I've been and where I'm going.
Yeah. All right. Well, you're very, very welcome. I love it. Okay, Mas. Well, I'm going to see you soon, or we're going to have a bike ride and a hike, and I'm going to try not to break an ankle this time, fall down a rabbit hole when I see you in a few weeks.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thanks again, Mas. Rest and transition. And we'll look forward to the next chapter in life. And to everyone that's listening, you know, if you're not inspired by this, then you have to listen to more episodes of Marci Kornegay's Adventures. Do go back, actually, to episode 1 of this is a 5-part series of Marci's travails on the PCT. And we'll bring you more. And there's a lot more episodes on the Amazon show and other shows here at With Sports on your podcast player. So for now, I'm Chris Stafford, and thanks again to my friend Marci Kornegay. Enjoy your adventures.
Go Hal.
Go and howl. Yes, find your joy and go and howl. And remember to do it 3 times.